except for Instagram. So we got to wait for a little bit here, up to the about
Fuck
20,
you, Instagram.
right, exactly, the 20 or 30-second mark. Also, cursing is allowed. So if you have a curse or two you're going to drop, please do so. It's okay. Here we go. Well, we are live on the gram. All right, so let's jump into this thing. So Bill, or as some people call you, Captain Walsh. Thank you for joining us today. And I know you're with Voorhees Police Department. You've been there for many years, and you have started some incredible mental wellness programs inside of Voorhees. You've worked with psychologists locally to do so, and you've really been making an impact in the community, something that a lot of people know about and a lot of people respect. And I'm sure you're proud of the work you're doing and also stressed out sometimes because I know it's hard. So I would love for you to take us through why you got into law enforcement, and some of the calls that maybe led you into some challenges yourself, which then led to you being like, you know what, we need to do more for the mental health of our officers and our guys, and led you into supporting not only the community but the officers themselves too. So go ahead, take it away from there.
Yeah, of course. I've been in law enforcement in some way, shape, or form for 25 years now. I kind of got my interest in it through family. So, like, we're a true blue bloods family. My dad was a cop for 45 years. My uncle is still on the job, and they're all in different departments. He's in probably close to 35 years. So I saw that growing up. I saw the impact that they had on their community. Particularly, obviously, my dad seeing the things. We grew up in the town. He was a police officer and lived there. So seeing the impact he had on the community, and the trust that our community members put in him, and people come up and thanking him and things like that were always huge. And just occasionally he would take me out and let me do like ride-alongs with him as a kid, and that was always exciting to me. Even if I could just go ride around the block in the police car, I thought that was awesome. I was the kid who was dressed up as a cop or a SWAT operator or a Secret Service agent on Halloween's. I was bought in pretty early to it. That
So
generation was very much more of a community.
Uh-huh.
That generation of police. I remember like family, like major events, like New Year's Eve, for instance. My dad's platoon, like even if they were working, all the spouses and kids went out to dinner together, and like
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Very cool.
rang in the new year, and we'd have barbecues together when they weren't working, and it was very much a family, right? And that's
Yeah.
some of the stuff I wish we would get back to it. I'm working hard at trying to get it back to that point, but we lost a
Hope
lot
you
of.
do.
Yeah, I think we lost a lot of that. Honestly, I think a lot of it came with the compressed work schedules with 12-hour shifts. Just you're working 12 hours, you have 12 hours left in your day, you got to squeeze it and sleep somewhere, and there's
That's
just not
right.
enough time for that. And a lot of the other factors that are people are just living busier lives today. So there's some of the things there that
Yep.
we'll capitalize on as we go here today. But I got into police work as a dispatcher when I was 16. So I was going to Gloucester Catholic High School. I would get done my school day. I would go to Belmar or Voorhees. I'd dispatch at both of them. Would go to their police department, change in my dispatch uniform, and then dispatch for 8 hours. And that's kind of how I got my foot in the door with actually seeing how the job looked. And I learned so much in dispatch and learned so much about triaging, about calming people down, de-escalation, managing resources. I mean, so much.
That is huge. I do have to read. So we do get comments live sometimes too, and I'll read them to you when they're from Instagram. One of our guys, Recon Marine, Ray Boughton, absolute savage. He had a rough time getting back into society again, and he said, "I didn't get ride-alongs till I was 25. Weren't too much fun." So yeah. So he
Backseat
wanted
belongs.
yeah. So he wanted to share that with you.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a good mixture today, by the way. Veterans, police officers, first responders overall,
Awesome.
and also family members and just, again, curious community members.
Yeah,
So,
it's there's a lot of commonalities. So
yes.
and oftentimes I feel like the veterans and the cops and firefighters and all, like sometimes, and our families, of course, they're a big component to this. Sometimes we feel like we're the only people who have each other's backs, and I'm glad to see there's so much of that integration between military and first responders, because we do. We're patriots and we support
Yep.
one another, and we do things other people will not do that need
That's
to be
right.
done. Yep.
That's right. I also, that's one of the reasons why when we started Refit, back in 2017, one of the biggest things that I thought about was, hey, we need to build that bridge between the two, because there could be so many local veterans that maybe even could show up to police departments sometimes to just talk to the guys and like give them some, comfort in that, hey, there's people around you in your community that really do give a shit about you and understand you. Of course, there's the other side where veterans also run into trouble with the law and they have issues like that as well, because of what they went through, their upbringings, whatever it might be. But I also love how law enforcement is beginning to adjust to that, and they are really beginning to try to help them when they run into them, because it's a deeper understanding of, hey, you know what? This guy saw war. This guy saw some shit. Or maybe they didn't see any combat in war. Maybe it was just a bureaucratic structures that broke down trust between them and government, and we need to rebuild that with them.
I'm seeing that more and more.
Yep. I love that, and I know that Voorhees is another department that does a lot like that as well. And the Garden State softball team just jumped in here. Police softball team we sponsor and support, so they're in here to support you as well.
Awesome to hear. Yeah, I mean it's huge, and we should have things like Veterans Court, and we should have things like diversion programs, because we do it for so many other populations. And what the hell are we giving back to our military populations who have given so much for our freedom?
Yeah, for sure. But also, even on the side, like the VRT, the veteran response teams and such, that really helps out a lot too, where you have officers going into it. Maybe they were serving at one point, or maybe they didn't. Maybe they just want to help out. And it gives them a chance to be able to give back. I love seeing the veteran response teams that are popping up.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So you grew up in a blue blood family. You were riding around, getting to ride along with your pops and, getting that done. Your father, is he still the chief of Belmar, or?
He retired in 23.
Okay, so he retired. That's wow, very long time. I know he was the chief over there and made a huge impact. So that's really, congratulations to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but what was the thing that you recognized starting at a young age that you were like, maybe something's a little off and maybe there needs to be more done on the mental health side? Did you ever have that thought when you were younger? Or?
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, I remember from the perspective of being a kid, right? So I remember around 12 years old, in New Jersey, in southern New Jersey, we had a lot of law enforcement officers, particularly in like the Camden, Gloucester, Burlington County areas, who were killed in line of duty. More of an uptick than we are used to in this area. We had the officers in Haddon Heights were murdered.
Yep.
We had Norcross and McLaughlin. We had Lee Gonzalez in Franklin Township, who was murdered by an Allen motorcycle gang member. We had just a number of officers who were killed in a short period of time. I remember being, seeing my dad getting ready for work and like making sure he's wearing his vest, and like kind of challenging questions like, "Hey, do you have this equipment? Do you have a full shift tonight?" Like, but here I am as a 12-year-old kid, like worried about whether or not my dad's going to come home and if he's truly prepared to whatever battle he might face that evening, and then having difficulty sleeping. So like, I remember those moments where it kind of exposed me early on that, hey, this is interesting. Like, it's not a lot of kids probably have to worry about this shit. As I came onto the force, I just turned 20. I was young. I didn't know shit about shit, right? And here I am telling people who've been fighting their entire 30-year marriage, like how to try and fix things in 15 minutes or so. And I'm just like, getting a front row seat to the world. And our culture, and I think it's shifting, thankfully, but our culture revolved incredibly around alcohol. It was just a part of everything we did. If we were celebrating, we had alcohol. If we were mourning a loss, we had alcohol. We were drinking at funerals, drinking at parties. I mean, it was just the center of our culture. So I just accepted that as normal. I thought that was, I didn't know otherwise. So I went on thinking that was normal. That'll come up throughout my journey probably as we talk. So I noticed those things, and I noticed certain calls for service kind of just stuck a different way. My first time I ever gave CPR was on a 3-year-old kid. And, you're trying to remember back to your in-service training, your academy training. You're trying to make sure you do everything right. You're going to be second-guessing yourself. I mean, police officers do CPR, but not to the level EMTs or hospital personnel do. I mean, we do it, but it's not often. We're certified in it. We train on it. We do scenario-based training on it, but it's still not the same as doing it all the time, right? So, I mean, you're second-guessing yourself. Unfortunately, she did come back, but then eventually ended up passing. And then, the family asked me to come to her services, and that was incredibly difficult and a challenge for me. And I had some support there from the organization, not to the levels we provide our officers today. But at least I had a sergeant there who said, "Hey, listen, I watched your in-car camera footage, and I listened to your audio and your radio transmissions. I read your report. I'm a CPR instructor. You did everything you possibly could do out there today. Just sometimes we don't win these." That was difficult for me. And at the time, I didn't have kids. I can't even imagine how much worse it would have been. Like now, I have 2 children. One is 3. and one is 7. So like, that would definitely be a struggle. So there were moments like that in my career where I was just like, wow. And oftentimes where I struggled with things mentally were the things I didn't really have control over, right? So I had anxiety outside of work. I had anxiety with like going on airplanes. I had, trying to like control things in my life that, I show up on a call for service and I can pretty much calm the chaos in 15 minutes or less, no matter what. But it's not that easy in your personal life, right? So to try and have, try to have that mindset, right? That recognizing that these things are problematic and trying to like take good care of yourself. But when I started on this job in 2003 and dispatching in 2000, like we didn't talk about going to, we didn't talk about going to therapy. We didn't talk about mental health providers. Like you would see a psychologist to try and like get your job. You do like a pre-employment psychological assessment, which obviously you're trying to get a job. So that can be looked at as a adversarial conversation to a degree, right? Or something where you're concerned with it. And then the only other time you typically heard of that was if like something popped off and like people were worried you couldn't do your job, you weren't fit anymore, and they were sending you to a psychologist to like kind of flag you and get you off the job. So like the whole goal was you don't want to be around a psychologist because it's bad, right? There was all these negative connotations with it. And then obviously, in some instances, usually the most horrific instances, if your agency was a little bit on point, they would send you to a psychologist after like a horrific traumatic incident. But generally that was limited back when I started to like, all right, you shot someone. And that's pretty much it. And that was, I think, more so for the cover of the legal privilege than it was necessarily like, let's take care of this cop. I think some agencies was more of a risk management checkbox approach. So those things I kind of noticed over time, and I'm like, this can't be all that we're doing. Like there needs to be more than this. And in 2010, I lost 2 friends to suicide within 3 weeks of one another.
Oh my God.
One was a police officer who I worked with. I started with the Cherry Hill Police Department. Before going back to Voorhees, I dispatched for Belmar and Voorhees. I became a police officer in Cherry Hill, worked there for a little over 4 years. Went back to Voorhees as an officer, which is where I'm currently at now. I lost a coworker to suicide, and then shortly, right around the same time period, again, like within 3 weeks, a retired officer from the next town over where my dad served. Literally, I called him uncle. He was all of our family events. His 3 little girls were all of our things. Like I knew his daughters, and he took his own life shortly after retiring.
So tough.
Yeah, it was absolutely horrendous, and that was the first personal exposure I had to law enforcement suicides, where I actually saw it up close and personal. And at the time, I was going for my master's degree for administrative science, and I had to pick out a capstone project, and I was like, I'm looking into this whole police suicide thing. So again, this was like 2010. And what I did back then, it's amazing how much technology has advanced in relatively short period of time, right? But back then, back then I was literally picking up my phone and like calling police departments, like 7-digit numbers, like NYPD, the New Orleans Police Department, and like going through phone trees and just trying to talk to somebody who might have some information that could help me like understand the problem. There was no Blue Help. Blue Help's an awesome resource. They weren't around back then. There was no like website I could go and look at like suicides in law enforcement. We're still not doing a great job federally at tracking it. I know there's work being done to get there, but it's still not where it needs to be. And I was just calling people up and like, luckily getting connected. I'm a person who believes in God, and I feel like God is very much involved in connecting me to people. And kind of this network has continued to grow since that initial paper started in 2010, right? And I've kind of been on this mission ever since then to at least hopefully do something to reduce police suicides, right? And the impacts they have on the ripple effects they have on the families, the communities, the departments, everybody. So in 2016 and 2017, I was attending a police leadership program at Temple University, and it was very much based on, it was evidence-based policing was the focus of this. So we're really doing a lot of things that were research-based, like things that were validated, reliable, that didn't cause harm. Like that was like the real focus of like, having programs are great, but if you're having programs that cause people harm, then they're not great. Like you're actually doing worse. So really got into some of the research around like critical incident stress and processing trauma and all these different things that were moral injury, which like no one talked about yet in policing. And it was starting to be talked about in military circles, but it wasn't really prevalent yet in policing. Workplace culture, all these different things kind of came into play. I developed a strategic plan and presented it to my chief, Lou Bordy, who's still our chief actually in Voorhees PD, is incredibly supportive of these programs. And our agency started seeing a psychologist once a year. All right, so every member of our force, from the chief down, the chief went on the very first day of these to lead from the front with the messaging, right? We go and have a session with a psychologist once a year. Automatically, we get assigned to go there while we're working, talk about whatever we want, receive some psychoeducation. It's truly our 45 minutes to an hour to chat. We have our psychologist, Dr. Jen Kelly, who I'm teaching a class with today, actually. We have her contact information. We have her cell phone number. We can reach out to her anytime and not necessarily even have to involve the agency. If we have something going on, we can be proactive in saying, hey, I have this going on, or hey, my family member's dealing with this. Like, do you recommend any resources for me? It's that direct connection. And there's a couple of reasons why I thought that this was important. Number one, it's an opportunity to meet with a mental health clinician under circumstances that aren't those adversarial ones that we talked about in the beginning of the show. Number two, if you do have to go there for some reason, whether it be you're in a personal, professional crisis, both, whether it be you've just been involved in a critical incident, exposed to trauma, that shouldn't be the first time you're meeting the clinician. That shouldn't be the first time you're going into their office, the first time you're seeing what the waiting room looks like. All these things, like, we're military, police, first responders. Let's face it, we're control freaks, right? I'm not going to. The whole reason I had a phobia of flying is I wasn't the one flying the plane, right? I'm not in control. So by kind of minimizing those things and exposing them, and exposure therapy is a big part of this whole journey with first responders, with military, with post-traumatic stress, exposing them to what the room looks like, exposing them to what the process of checking in looks like, exposing them to talking with a mental health professional and seeing that they come out of there and nothing adverse happens to them after that interaction. It builds trust. All right. Yep. So it hopefully opens up the opportunity where the department isn't having to send people to see somebody. The people are self-deploying, right? They're going to seek out the help themselves, right? So psychoeducation comes into this a lot. We bring our family members in for training with the psychologist. Yep, they come in, they get psychological training from our psychologist. They learn about her, they learn about confidentiality, they learn about privilege, how to access the services, and trying to, we're both, Dr. Kelly and I are both major proponents of the fact that if you want to have an early intervention system, or early warning system, or whatever you want to call it, your real early intervention system is the family and friends that are close to that person.
That's right.
So by educating them and letting them have a voice in this conversation and equipping them with what services are out there, and educating them on the warning signs and educating them on the confidentiality protections and all that go with it, I think it's huge. And when a person is dealing with a significant crisis, or they're hitting their rock bottom, or their coping skills are becoming exhausted, or they're not qualifying for this particular thing, it's oftentimes a family who says, "Yo, you're not good." It might not be the actual officer or military member or first responder who's recognized. It might be the family member who's recognizing it. And that was a case I had personally where my coping mechanisms weren't working. I was going through a tough time. I just experienced a significant loss in my family. Yeah. And it was my wife who told me, like, you really need to go talk to a therapist. Like, you talk about this stuff all the time, but you need it right now. Yeah. And that breakthrough point was, you're right. And I did, but I still remember going for my first therapy session and wondering if people were aware I was there, or if anybody followed me, what happened if somebody would see me there that I knew. And as I reflect back on that now, it sounds silly, but it's not silly. So many people experience that same thing: the stigma, the fear, the anxiety, and the lack of control. And I look back on it now, and and you'll often hear people say this who have been clients of therapy. And I'm actually in school right now to become a licensed professional counselor. I'm almost done. You'll hear people say, "I wish I'd gone so much earlier. If I had known that the impact therapy could have had on my life or my family or my trajectory, I wish I'd have done this sooner." And I felt the same exact way. So I see Scott's comment there too, and we do have a peer support team. And I'll get into that because that's a valid point. So building off of that, right, our foundational piece with the clinician, right, and that's a huge part of it. I think that is our good foundation to make sure we have officers who are, number one, doing no harm. Mm-hmm. Programming, often well-intentioned folks. They mean well, but they may actually be putting things into place or compelling people to share things that actually could cause more psychological harm or increase the risk of post-traumatic stress, right? So we want to kind of be aware of that, to be very mindful of what the research tells us, to have partnerships and stable partnerships in case we do need more than what a peer can provide. Oftentimes it could exceed the scope of what a peer can do as far as like actually providing counseling or getting somebody into substance use disorder treatment facilities and things along those lines. So that was the foundational piece. And then equipping the family with the tools and the resources and the knowledge, right, to ensure they are able to help their loved one through this journey as well, and making sure that they also have resources. Summer of 2020, I mean, I think all the anti-policing protests, I think it had a bigger impact on my family. I mean, it impacted me, of course, but it had a huge impact on my family too, and fear of retaliation and just the hatred that being spewed towards police in general. Around the country and some of the rhetoric that was out there. I mean, that's something where they can't be left out of this conversation.
That's right.
Part of the whole process of this wellness program has been consistently seeking feedback from the end user, right? So we have research partnerships with several universities. We look at that research, we take it seriously. We do it through a university because there's an institutional review board. So we're making sure we don't do harm in the research, but also the research, whatever our officers are giving us information-wise, it goes to a university. It doesn't go to anybody at the department. And the university makes sure it's clean and aggregated before it goes back to the agency with action items, right? No one's seeing anything at our agency that could even remotely possibly identify somebody. If we have 6 detectives and somebody says something that's related to the detectives, we might not get the information because they're going to out somebody, right? As I said, I'm in a firehouse, so you're going to hear bells going off. So it comes back to us stripped of any identifying data from the research institution. And we take that information that the officers have taken their time to do for us, right? We want to actually make sure if we're asking questions, we're actually doing something with the answers we get. That information comes back to us. And one of the things that came out of it was officers were struggling with financial wellness and financial, right? Not something that was on my radar. I was ignorant to it because I'm just thinking trauma, I'm thinking family dynamics, I'm not thinking financial wellness, right? So if you don't ask the questions, you're not going to get the answers.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And taking that information, actually doing something with it. So bringing financial planners in to talk to our officers at in-service training, have a financial planning wellness guidebook, like finding true partnerships and making sure we're educating and giving resources. That was part of it. The other part of that was they wanted, peer support was always part of the plan, the strategic plan for our department. But what we got nuanced out of that research was that my department I work for is relatively smaller compared to like big cities. We have like 50-something officers, but we're all tight knit. Like we all know each other. What kind of came out of research is I want to talk with peers, but I also maybe not necessarily want to talk with peers here. But I want to talk with peers that are similar enough, but not maybe necessarily that work with me every day.
Don't know you, yeah.
Yeah. So at that point, with the chief's blessing, we pushed forward there, myself and Dr. Kelly, and we partnered with the Gloucester Township Police Department under Chief Dave Harkins. We partnered with the Cherry Hill Police Department, currently under Chief John Osmond, or at the time was Chief Bud Monahan, and Chief Rob Kemp for a while as well. And we had those 3 agencies form the first multi-agency police peer support team.
It's great.
Yep. So we have 20. We started out with 23 members on that team from those 3 agencies. We were very purposeful in who we selected on the team. We wanted to make sure we had a rich diversity, background, experience, military service, active military service, detectives, canine, traffic, end of career, middle career. We had a retired officer, early in your career officers, people from different life backgrounds and experiences like that too. To just make sure there was somebody on that team who everyone might feel comfortable with, at least try to be as inclusive and representative as we possibly could. And then with that team, we have a direct relationship with our police psychologists. So we have that clinical oversight piece that's often missing in some of these peer programs. Most of what's being done, though, is the peers. Right? They're having those conversations. We're actually, myself and Dr. Kelly are running a training program right now for a new peer support team that's getting ready to launch this week for some police departments here in Burlington County. And with that team, like we really want them to be trained in active listening. We want them to know the resources that are out there, know confidentiality, know what privilege looks like, know which options afford protection. And how I always explain peer support is us as peers, we're in an air traffic control tower, right? And we have all these different planes and helicopters that are on approach to our airfield. And they're talking with us on the radio. I can't get in that plane or helicopter and fly it for them. I can try and guide them right from my position inside the tower. And they're giving us information, and we're helping relay them maybe to the next airfield, or we're helping them give them information how to prepare for approach. Okay, and we're giving them whatever information they need. We're being good active listeners as these air traffic controllers. But there's going to be some times where we got to put that plane on a particular runway, right? And our peers need to know runway to put that plane on to make sure that they're getting the services that they need. It may be couples counseling, it may be a substance use addiction facility or an outpatient, intensive outpatient, it may be AA, it may be therapy for trauma exposure, maybe something for their family that they're dealing with. A lot of times, what the peers are bringing to us is not necessarily always job problems, but hey, I have this going on at home. I don't know what to do. I feel out of control. Like, and a lot of what we're doing is providing help with those avenues. We have a research partnership also with American University. I'm a lead scholar through National Institute of Justice, which is a great program where pairs, cops who are interested in academia, so we're called academics, is like the term, with academic institutions. So there's lead scholars who are police officers, law enforcement officers. There's lead scholars who are academics, right? So the leads, law enforcement officers and academics work together on projects. So like for our peer support team, um, we have a partnership with American University where they do our data collection, and everything's stripped of identifying information. Just make that clear. We'll say, I'll have a contact with a peer. I'll go on my phone. I'll log it for American University. Met with a peer from Voorhees Police Department today, just because we're tracking to see if like they're using us more than they're using the external or vice versa. And it was in relation to substance use disorders for a family member. And I referred them to this particular service, like Employee Assistance Program or AA or whatever the case is. Then it's going to ask like how comfortable I was as a peer with that encounter, and did I feel trained enough to handle it properly. So we take all that aggregate data and we provide additional training to our peer support teams to make sure they're comfortable and confident in dealing with whatever problems are presenting. We try to drive systemic change at the agencies if we notice one particular pattern of things that are causing stress in those three agencies or in one of those three agencies, or now with the new team, we'll have four agencies represented. And we're actually utilizing that data to do good, right? So one of the things that popped up, we saw a trend with officers who were on the peer support team, and they were helping their peers out a lot with grief and loss. And that was something that wasn't really popping before. I mean, we've been an active team since 2020. This was something that just started popping up recently. So what's our response to that? Well, we contact Samaritan Hospice, and they were blessed, and we were blessed enough that they provided us with a woman named Joan Ordilli, and she does grief counseling, and she came and provided our team, and actually she's speaking right now to our new team on how to help people process through the different forms of grief and what that looks like, the different stages and things like that. So we're very much in attune and try our best to be in attune with what our people out on the front lines need, and then what we need to do to make sure the peers are prepared to help them with whatever it is they're needing, recognizing that that's going to change over time, right? We can't keep focusing on one thing and just say that's all we're going to do, because this is fluid. And if we're not answering these questions, if we're asking these questions routinely, then we're missing the mark.
Yeah, there's something interesting about that too that you just mentioned, and I have a few questions to follow up on stuff that you said. I took notes, but more recently, you just mentioned how you're seeing grief pop up as an issue. Immediately, I think about the nuances of research and how long it takes to conduct research, and good research at that. And what's interesting is you started collecting this back. You said in 2020, or was it earlier?
2020, 2019, it might have been our first one. Yeah, I think 2019.
So you're collecting information now on maybe later stage guys, but really you're collecting information from the guys who are younger, and you now have this opportunity to collect data with them as they go along their journey. So it could take, 20 years to maybe end up developing a really good set of, hey, this is what the journey of law enforcement looks like. You begin to map out almost eventually what are some of the challenges you're going to end up being presented with as you go on in your career, and almost prepare guys for that. And that takes a long time to develop that large data set, but that's interesting that you guys are doing that now, and you're beginning to see these things pop up. And it's almost, again, in my mind, I think about the nuances of research and how limited the data sets are when you're doing these things. But how, as you continue to research it, the story becomes more clear as you go. So that's very, very cool. But I want to go back to point one. You mentioned alcohol, and alcohol is something that the veteran community, first, just people who serve. Alcohol is like the go-to for a lot of people. Here at Refit, we don't allow alcohol on our retreats or Really at most of our events, if we're doing like a fundraiser and it's a golf outing, people can get alcohol, whatever. But we don't promote it. We don't condone it. None of that stuff. We don't take money from alcohol based organizations or companies. We've had plenty of offers, and we're always just like, look, we can't. Thank you for the offer, though, because we don't. We see that it's become such a huge issue for people in their lives. Now, how did it play a role in your life? And then how did you realize that this isn't for me and this is actually causing more harm?
Yeah, I think that what was said to me earlier at one point in my life was, do you get in trouble every time you drink? And the answer is no. Every time you get in trouble, are you drinking? The answer is yes. Then all right, there's your answer, right?
Yeah.
So it's just something where I decided I don't want it anymore. I've had some personal adversity in my life, some medical conditions pop up, and it's not for me. It was definitely something we used as a crutch. It was a more of a social thing when I started, like kind of more of a camaraderie type of thing. You get done the 311 shift, everyone goes out together, and then
Yeah.
kind of becomes at some point, I think, a crutch for us, right? And it just doesn't work well. If you look at like Sober on a Drunk Planet, it's a great book that really talks a lot about the health consequences of alcohol and of how long it takes to process and get out of your body. I think it's 8 days for it to even leave your body, and the impacts it have on your brain and things like that, and all this stuff.
Oh yeah.
So if there's somebody who's considering going sober, I mean, this you can fix all this and reverse it all. So there's no time. It's never too late of a time to say, I'm going to try to get healthier, and this is one of the things I'm going to do.
That's right. You went on a weight loss journey yourself too, correct?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you look great, man. Was it also around the time that you started quitting alcohol too that you really took that more seriously?
Yeah, I mean, it's we actually had a peer support team meeting where we had a medical doctor come out and speak to us, and it was interesting how this all came to fruition. So I was on the Reducing Crime podcast years ago with Dr. Jerry Ratcliffe from Temple. He's a great guy. He's one of my mentors, and we talked a lot about this kind of stuff. And his podcast focuses a lot more on like research and policing and like crime reduction and stuff like that. And obviously, Reducing Crime podcast, but we really talked a lot about this. And out of that podcast episode, there was a medical doctor, a primary care physician, who listened to it and reached out to me through social media and said, I'm retiring from primary care. His name's Dominic McFadden. He's a great guy. I'm retiring from primary care physician work. I've seen so many. I have friends that are police officers. I golf with police officers. I've seen patients who are police officers. There's so many patients who were police officers that I wish I had had the opportunity to speak with more because they never came to their visits that ended up dying by things we probably could have fixed for them.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, I just wish I could talk about this. And I'm like, well, I have the perfect opportunity for you to talk about this. So he came in and he spoke with our peer support team. And one of the points that really kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, which is when I kind of started really focusing on my physical health journey too, was how much effort and research do you all put in to buying a new car? And how much effort and research do you all put into finding your primary care physician? And it wasn't just me that was like hit like a ton of. We were all looking around the room at each other like, whatever, whoever accepts my insurance, whatever. I don't really look into it much. And I went and I found a new primary care physician. I made it clear to her I wanted to get every cent I could out of my pension, and I wanted to be there for my wife and my kids, but on the job and in retirement, and what steps do I need to take to get this going, right? Recognizing that it's not going to be an overnight journey, right? It's going to be something that's truly having to change everything, reframe, rewire how I look at life, how I respond to stress, how I cope with things, what I put into my body, all these habits that we've developed over the years since childhood. Stress eating, that's a thing,
Yes.
So like really trying to get on that path there with prioritizing, going for walks in the morning or in the evening if you can't go in the morning, getting to the gym a few days a week for weight training.
Yes.
Getting your blood work done, seeing a sleep doctor, like all these different. I mean, we have all these different things that shift work and the hypervigilance roller coaster that Dr. Kevin Gilmartin refers to. All these things impact everything. Like this job, military, first responders, our sleep is horrible. Having poor sleep impacts your cognition, it impacts your mental health, it impacts your physical health. It impacts so many different things, right? And half the time we're not even getting diagnosed. There's some crazy studies out there on sleep health. that are, just like the numbers are shocking, like how many people are dealing with poor sleep, right? And
Yep.
this impacts so many things, right? So now you see, all right, you have angry outbursts, all right? Is it because you're just an angry person, or is it because you're not getting good quality sleep? Like you're getting into car accidents, or you're doing this or doing that, or your medication's not working as it should be. All right, well, what about your sleep, right? So all these different things interconnect with each other, and I feel like we're finally getting to a point in this area. I'm just going to call it the service population, right? Like our military, our police, our first responders,
Yeah.
firefighters. Um, the service population is finally getting to this point where we're like, all right, so we're finally recognizing that we have a problem with suicides, right? It took us forever to get there, but we're finally recognizing there's a problem, right? And we're finally starting to come around to the fact, and people are starting to become very open with the fact that they go to therapy. That's awesome. I never thought I was going to see that. I never thought people would talk openly about going and talking to a therapist or a psychologist, right? So we're finally getting to that point. Now we're like, all right, what else can we do? What's our next mission? I think a lot of that is, all right, let's get ourselves healthy, right? And yeah, the gym's a part of it, right? But there's so much more, and I think a lot of it's kind of the fear, right? The fear of the unknown, like what information is this blood work going to tell me? Like doomsday, like we catastrophize so many things because we're wired to think worst case scenario, and I got to survive this day, right? So if sometimes ignorance is bliss, we'll say, even though that's not right, but that's how we've been wired. And it's like
Yes.
once you're afraid to get the information, like I don't want to see what this test says, or if I go, oh, I don't want to find out, I got to go on this, or I got to wear a CPAP, or I got to take blood pressure medicine. Like I'd rather just try and work on it on my own, or I don't want to take anti-anxiety medication. I'll just work on it on my own. Well, listen, it's not working, right? It's not working. There's people here, there's science here, there's medicine here that can help you with all these things, and you just have to come forward and take that first step. Find the right doctor, right? Find the right therapist, and be like, hey, here's me. This is what I got going on. This is where I want to be at, right? And you just
Yep.
got to get on that journey. And goal setting is huge. I have a book. I have an old school journal that I have with me at all times. I think you probably saw it with me when I met with you for lunch that one day,
Yep.
and it's just scribbles of things that I need to get done, and some of it's long term. Like I came across one the other day that was in my office, and it's a list from like 2019 of goals I need to achieve in the long term. And it was awesome, man. I checked off a lot of that stuff.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
but goal setting is something that's so important, and you really got to look at your whole person, right? And then when you start correcting these things, right, you also are more inclined to want to help your family with these things and your friends with these things, and spreading the word like, hey, I went and saw a doctor for this, and I found out this is going on. So I started adjusting and pivoting here, and now it's changing these things. And this is my like this week alone, I've shared my doctor's information with like two or three people, and they're like, yeah, they sound awesome. Like, so these are the kind of things. The Yucca app on your phone, like that's crazy. Like you start like reading the kind of poison that we're putting into our bodies. It's just mind numbing to me. Like we're such control freaks, but we're willingly putting this. And listen, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm guilty too. But we're like willingly putting crap into our bodies when we're trying to be in control. And all these things, these extra sugars, alcohol, tobacco products, like all these things that we sometimes enjoy, or maybe we enjoy too much, or maybe in moderation are good. But all these things we put in, it's causing all these other issues with our mind, with our body, with our support system around us, with our friends, and oftentimes just kind of doing that reset, right? Like, all right, what am I going to do here, and do it so that you're setting yourself up to succeed. Like you don't want to bite off more than you can chew, right? It's a poor pun with eating, but I mean, I mean, you want to set smart goals for this stuff, and take your New Year's resolutions, and they don't have to just be on December 31st. Like, what's your resolution for this month? What do you want to change? What part of your life is causing you anxiety that you can actually fix?
That's right. Yeah, there's something very deep about the whole health of your body and of the surroundings, or the people that you surround yourself with, right? One thing I've actually become pretty obsessed with recently, and I'm working on writing something up uh, that I would love to publish, like a 30, 40 page book, just from some of the things that I've learned and seen while working with the law enforcement and veterans and the service community in general. And one of those things is actually that I haven't heard you say yet. What words and what people are using, and what type of words are we ingesting? Right? We eat words, and I keep on repeating this almost every episode now. We're literate creatures. That's what separates us from every other animal out there in the animal kingdom. What are the words that you're allowing into your brain, allowing into your life? If you're saying negative shit, stop saying that. Catch yourself and change that, and change those words, right? And change the way you're looking at the world, because that's how we process the world, is through the words that we allow in. So I mean, and it all does even translate back to the foods you take and the sleep that that you're having and the working out. Working out is, oh my God, that is so crucial. That's like arguably, 60% of your journey. You have to be doing something physical. Food might be the 60, and then, working out's probably like the 30, and then the rest of it is, sleep, right? So that's just breaking it down to the simple core. But I mean, like, and then that promotes a healthier body and mind, which then allows you to combat the negativity that's going through your mind.
Yeah, I mean,
So
words matter. I mean, they absolutely do. Words
so
matter.
much.
Yep.
So much. I mean, everything in our world is structured around documents.
Mhm.
Like you mentioned so many times in this entire podcast. What are the processes? What are the protections? What are these, that, and the other? It's all based on words, all based on everything that's controlling around you. So how do you play within the system itself to get yourself healthier, right?
Yep.
So, and that's crucial for the bureaucratic structures that law enforcement has to operate within. Um, and also even other service members as well. So I do want to jump into also the suicide side of things, where you mentioned a couple of your buddies, took their own lives. And how did you feel in those moments? And like, what was the way through?
Yeah. So I mean, shock is what I felt in those moments. TJ, I never expected. Not that I expected either of them, but I mean, he was just a happy-go-lucky guy, trail officer with me. My uncle Russ, I never expected that either. Both of them were kind of just, for lack of a better word, shock. And after that, when I started really looking into it and seeing, at that point, I was a street cop. I didn't really know this was a huge issue. And the more I started looking into it, I was like, wow, this is like a really prevalent thing.
Yeah.
And no one was really talking like back then in like '09, 10, 11, like when I was doing all this stuff. Like I still, the best way to put it is like this dark family secret that we kept. Like no one wanted to admit it was a problem. No one would admit it was even there. People got very uncomfortable about me talking about it and asking questions about it. Like, what was I doing? Where was this information going to go? It was very much secretive. Um, even like how the funerals went. Like people argued about that. Like, well, why should they get saluted, or like, why should we wear a uniform, or why are we doing a police escort? Like all these things. I remember saying to one officer, like, this isn't for them. They're gone. Like this is for their family. Like, well, why are we having this conversation? Like why? They served a significant portion of their life, and so did their family, uh, for altruistic motive, like to protect and serve their communities or their country, right?
Yeah.
So why are we having this conversation? And I think that kind of put me on this path of it made me like double down on this work. Like I'm like nah, like it's not just going to be research about like the number of suicides. Like I have to change this crap. Like this can't be how our families feel. This we can't be having these conversations trying to figure this stuff out graveside. Like this is BS.
Sounds a
So
lot
that's
like
kind of
Holly. Yeah.
So that's kind of where it went with me. And I said earlier, like words matter. Like we have wellness visits with our psychologist, but we call them automatic annual wellness visits. Like not there are they mandatory? Sure, but why would I use that word? It's just dirty, right? When I talked about Russ and TJ earlier, I said they died by suicide. I didn't say they committed suicide. Like these words, and people, it's not intentional when people, use different words or things like that. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just we have to do better. Um, to destigmatize and to be careful with our word selection so that we're not hurting family members left in the wake, so that we're not continuing to stigmatize suicide to a point where people aren't comfortable coming forward and say, hey, I've been thinking about this.
Hmm.
Most, we would like to think that a lot of these suicides, people are trying to come forward for help, or they are throwing some kind of clues out there. We want to make sure that they're comfortable enough to have these difficult conversations when it arises.
I have a difficult question for you.
Yeah.
What if, when you're trying to be and truly trying to be softer and more what is called mindful, what if that also could present potential damage from the side of the people who might never seek it now because it's even weaker?
Yeah, so I mean, and here's the thing, like there are always going to be people who are just completely resistant to this. I would say now it's a minority. It's not as prevalent as it was when I kind of started into this chapter. But there's always going to be, and what's sad about it is oftentimes the people who are the most vocally against it, when you get into the weeds with them after whatever it is, like one on one, and I've had this happen a few times where I've been working with some people who've been through some stuff, and like there'll be one person there that's like completely adverse to it, and that's kind of being confrontational and just angry.
Yeah, yeah.
One on one with them afterwards, they're like, "Yeah, this stuff's crazy. Like I'm in therapy for it." And I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing? Like you crapped all over this stuff, and like you're going to therapy yourself." Oftentimes it's the folks who are the most resistant, or the people who need help the most, or the people who are already getting help themselves, and they don't want people to figure it out. So they're putting up all these fronts and facades to kind of protect their ego.
So I feel like the reason why I asked that question is because I also feel like there's another side to the narrative, because narrative matters for it, right?
Of course,
So I feel like there's another side to the narrative, one that I present to a lot of guys where I'm like, look, don't look at this as something that, is if you need to go in and get support and help just to talk through something that's being challenging to your mind, it's supposed to be a fight, right? You're fighting something that is actually destroying your life. And I turn it more into a strong, like it is a fight. It is something more masculine, if you will. And it's a way for you to lead better when you get out of it, right? And you get to learn how to lead your life better, and you get to learn to lead others better, maybe even just your family at home, by being more in touch and in tune with what's going on. Now, that doesn't mean in touch with your feelings to the point where, oh, we expect you to cry all the time and all that stuff, because I also love promoting stoicism, which is a very, very, very misunderstood philosophy, because
I mean,
all psychology is
there's a
born
lot of
from philosophy.
spirituality in that too, James. I mean, there's lots of spiritual undertones in Stoicism.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. And it's not about how you necessarily express those feelings, but it's how you process those feelings, right? That's what at the end of the day stoicism is all about. And Cedric just said here on Instagram, he said, what if you're not a leader? Everyone's a leader of their own life. That's the argument. Whether you're a leader of people or not, it's how you define leader. And in this case, Cedric, everybody's a leader. You have to be a leader in your own life.
When you talk
to
openly
be
about this
better.
stuff, your message is going to help people, whether you're a leader in title or not. Like
exactly right.
Everybody can be a leader, definitely a leader of your own life, but you don't need a title to be a leader.
That's exactly right.
Action in your behavior to make sure.
That is exactly right. So it's a more. So that's something that I've noticed as well that I think is super important because I don't think anyone's out of reach, right? I think there are people who are resistant to it, but I think it's just the narrative that they're being talked to, or how the narrative is being talked to them, I should say.
Yeah. So example I gave, like, the devil's in the details there, right? I met them individually afterwards.
Yep.
Right. So I'm still not casting them aside. Like, I realize there's something there.
Oh yeah.
And then we need to have a conversation, right? I can't just say, well, that person's such and such, and I'm not talking.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, that was more just a question back in terms of like, how do you look at it from the other side, from the other perspective of individual? Yeah. That's
absolutely. That's what we should be doing. Is like, all right, well, what could be making that person acting this way right now?
Yep. Let's dive into it. Yeah.
I also have a follow-up question.
If
you're done yours.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, a million minutes ago, you touched on the civilian side, the family side of the being scared and anxiety of being a family member of a police officer. I actually owned that. My brother-in-law, my wife's brother, who is my brother. I believe you were actually his evac driver instructor when you were a sergeant.
Nice.
So when he joined all of the ACAB, I'm a traveler, not a driver.
Oh yeah.
That whole era was beginning, and my wife was anxiety driven. And it was just every day worry about him and his journey. And I guess my question is, how do you go about uh, alleviating that anxiety in family members when you're talking to them?
Yeah, I don't know that we'll ever alleviate it, right? So, but I mean, we can try our best to make them feel a little bit more comfortable. One of the things that we like to do is talk with family members about the protective factors, right? So talk with them, and I'm not just talking about like psychological protective factors. I'm talking about like these are the shields we issue your family members to take out on the street with them. These are our radios that they can call for help. These are the ballistic vests that they have. These are the ballistic helmets in their cars that they can use for certain incidents. These are the weapons that we have provided to them. These are the entry tools that are in their cars. These are our SWAT team members. This is our armored rescue vehicle, and kind of just showing them here's all the things and here's all the steps we've taken and how seriously we take the safety and the health of your family member. That we have all these trainings, we have all these tools, all these equipment at our disposal, and that takes care of at least maybe they're obviously not going to not worry, but at least they know that we're trying our best as an organization to protect their loved one, and we recognize that we have an ethical and a moral obligation to do so. And then to the more nuanced piece of that, like the psychological safety component of it, bringing the family members in and teaching them, all right, this is how to be a more resilient law enforcement family. Yeah, there might be times where your significant other is going to miss a major holiday, or it can't come to the Little League practice of the game. Record it for them, or FaceTime if we can, or let's move Christmas dinner to December 26th instead. Like, does it really make a difference what day of the week it's on? So some of these kind of things where we'll bring in like significant others of law enforcement officers to speak about their experiences with it, kind of provide peer support for them, right? Like let them support one another through their ups and downs, and just making sure we're there for each other as best as we possibly can be, through good times and bad, just like a marriage, right? If something's going on, like we got to make sure we're there and we're stepping up and stepping in to help.
I love that this is turning into that from this is the job that they signed up for, because I feel like pre all of that era, I think that's what it was. I think it was hey, this is what you signed up for. There's a lot of that in the veteran community too. I can understand for myself, a lot of it used to be, hey, this is what you signed up for. This is the hardened life. This is what you have to understand. This is the mindset that you have to be in. And I feel like that's what it used to be accepted as, and the same for the police, is that, hey, this is your job, this is your loved one's job, this is what they signed up for. They're gonna miss these things, they're gonna be in harm's way, they're gonna face adversity with the civilian population, and they just have to deal with it. So it's nice and it's refreshing hearing a different side of that, and that there is support, and yeah, I appreciate that.
No, thanks. Great question. Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like that's so critical. The family side of things. I mean, that's they're serving too, in a big way. Loved ones coming home late, staying on shift or getting called in early, things like that.
Working during COVID. Yep.
What's that?
Working during COVID.
Right. Yep. All the struggles that came with just the nuances of the fears of them being literally on the front line of the actual community itself, right? Like that is something that I feel like is so critical, because that also helps the officer when they get home. Like I'm sure you guys talk about the process of like, hey, when your loved one comes home, maybe they need space. Talk about like what does it look like when they're actually coming into the house, because
Yep.
a lot, like for veterans, something you hear considerably is like, hey, when we get back, like we have a couple weeks sometimes to reintegrate back in. And a lot of them, when they hear officers, like, damn, like they don't have like time to, it's literally like 30 years or 20 years or whatever it might be of just straight, being deployed and working. So that's
decompression is
difficult.
part of it, man. Like decompression is a huge part of this.
Mm-hmm.
Second part of that is, if you ever find yourself in Summerdale, give Officer Pat Dietz a hard time, please.
I can talk to the chief over there if you want. That's my uncle.
No. Oh, even better. Even better.
That's great. So how do you guys? I mean, you guys do take them through that kind of like process of decompression when they come home and such?
Yeah, we talk about the decompression process, and it might to the spouse who's been dealing with crazy kids all day, seem like ridiculous that their loved one's going to come home and say, I need a break. Because to them, it's like, you've been at work for 12 hours. What do you mean you need a break? I've been dealing with the kids for 12 hours. So we have to like really break that down and be very mindful of like feelings as we're doing this, right? But do you want your loved one to be present, or do you want them to actually like just be there, right? So the decompression piece is work that out amongst each other, but also make sure to the officers, make sure you're being equitable with your significant other, your
That's
partner.
right. Make sure you're being fair
to decompress, right? So
yep.
Is it you're stopping off and you're going to the gym on your way home from work? Is it that you sit in the driveway for 10 minutes and listen to a podcast or listen to some relaxing music? My thing, especially during COVID, was I would come home and we had like a decon area in our house, and then I would go shower and like, no, I didn't interact with anybody because I didn't know what I was bringing home with me. Right. So, and that kind of turned into like a more formalized decompression period for me when I got home from work, because it became a habit. Like 30 days or more, something becomes a habit. So just kind of talking about that, giving some like instruction on like what has worked for us and what hasn't worked for us, like letting the spouses share some stories or family members share some stories. You know, I'll come home from work sometimes and my wife will know it's been a bad day. But we have it arranged so like she knows, like I'll tell her when I'm ready to talk about it. It's like, yeah, I acknowledge you're picking up correctly. It has nothing to do with you or the kids. So like, don't worry about that. But yeah, something's going on, and I will talk with you about it. But once the kids are in bed and I've come to a better place, we'll talk. And that's it. She leaves it alone. She doesn't probe anymore, and we're good to go. You know, it's oftentimes we think like, oh, I must have done something wrong. They must be upset with me. They must be upset. We always put it to ourselves all the time, right? We're not like thinking, all right, they're not in a place where they want to talk yet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so critical, the communication piece, and really urging people to have that communication between each other. That's everything. I mean, when we're out on our retreats, for example, with Refit, we try to push that home. Like, hey, how are you with your spouse? Like, are you actually even talking? Are you talking to your kids? Are you building a relationship with them? Are you trying? Like, are you just distant all the time? Like, and be honest, because that's also critical. Like, you have to know that at some point it's a boiling point where resentment begins to build, and you don't want to invite resentment into any relationship at all.
Yeah, no doubt. Great points. I definitely want to go on one of those retreats with you at some point too. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, man, you are more than welcome to come out, brother, for real. We actually have Nick Lasaleno. He is with the Franklinville Police Department. He's going to be one of our leaders. We're going to host one just for law enforcement, and he's going to be actually one of our retreat leaders for that when the time comes. He's the guy that also oversees the fire team, or that police softball team, made up of mostly New Jersey police officers that travel all over the place for playing softball. And it's a great way to just relax and decompress, and have some kind of normalcy to their lives, because you live such an abnormal life in being a law enforcement officer. So, and yeah, so that's something I will definitely include you into that conversation. Would love to have you be a part of that.
You all are doing. I mean, it's fantastic the work you're all doing. So thanks for that. Keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we also do something else that's really cool, and it leads into a really good final piece to this, because I see we're approaching our hour. We've actually been showing up to Magnolia every 6 months or so. Sometimes it's pushed back a little bit, but their EMT department, and we sometimes have the law enforcement officers and some fire department firefighters that come in, and we all talk and just have them share stories about the past X amount of months, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like tell us a hard call that you guys went through, or talk about it amongst yourselves. One of my favorite times that we had when we did that was ended up being a 3-hour conversation. It was fantastic. There's no time limits on it. 3 or 4 hours. There's no time limits on us doing this. And we tell them, like, look, this isn't getting out anywhere. It's literally just us. We're just having story time, essentially. Just tell the stories. And the one officer talked about, and I went to him specifically to talk about a really rough incident that happened in Magnolia probably like 6 or 7 months ago. And it ended up becoming almost like this training in a way, right? Where the officer is talking about his experience, just talking about his experience in that event. And one of the points that became a really hard one was he was walking back and forth between the body. Just said, I'm going to get as graphic as that. I don't want to get too graphic. It was a horrific incident.
Yeah.
Kept on walking back and forth. And he's like, man, like I felt like I was disrespecting this person. And one thing that came to my mind immediately was like, whoa, that means you still have humanity. You still care. You have a huge heart. Don't challenge that. Don't go against that. And I made sure I told him that later. And he's like, dude, I needed that. Give me a huge hug afterwards, all that shit. But the firefighters and EMTs that were listening were like, dude, didn't even think of that. Like next time when that happens, I'm going to make sure I pronounce the person deceased and cover the bodies up and everything like that, like quicker. I should have done that, blah, blah, blah. They were able to talk about that together, right? Dude, it was great.
And you're creating environments that don't surround around a depressant, right? So a lot of these conversations used to be had, they were just at a bar around a depressant.
That's right. That's exactly right. Hey, let's talk about this together as a whole team, and let's really drive down to it. And by the way, if you get called out, go do your call and then come on back. We'll be here, right? So it is no time limit. Even if it's a 6-hour call they have to go out on, we're hanging out at the department. We're going to be there till 1 a.m, whatever it is, right? And we're there for them, and they talk. They get to get things out, and they get to. In the military, they call it an AAR, an after action report, where they really get to break things down and collaborate on that. It's almost like an AAR session. Just tell the story. Yeah. What did you learn? What did you feel during it? What do you think could be better? And it's promoting this idea of cohesion inside of the community to get back to what you really want it to be. Let's have barbecues together. Let's have the dinners together, all that stuff. It's really trying to bring that back and foster that change.
Keep the healthy stuff. Get rid of the unhealthy stuff. Absolutely.
Exactly right. And there's nothing better than having, even if it's like a veteran that comes in that we send, like Dan is a vet, he goes in and we do these talks, and then the officers, the firefighters and the EMTs are all like, this is another service member, almost like they belong here, right? And it gives meaning back to the veteran to be able to help. So like that the true community connection and unification. So, oh my gosh, dude, that was amazing. And we've been doing that, for almost like 2.5, almost 3 years now. We've been doing that. It's been spectacular, man. Like people are still on the job, still moving, still pushing. We're watching them grow. One guy went from an EMT, he's now actually a police officer, and like it's really promoting that service and that giving back and that. Being a part of the community again, and you have more purpose than what you're presenting. Absolutely. That whole thing. So, yeah, I love what you're doing too. And if there's ever anything that we can do together, on that piece, on that side that we could bring, I would love to talk about that with you at some point as well.
Yeah, we definitely got to continue the conversation. I appreciate it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, man, this was a fantastic episode. But before we go, I do want to have one last story from you because we do have a goal with this. This podcast is FML, usually means Fuck My Life, but we're switching that over, a reframe to For My Life. Yeah. When did you go from Fuck My Life to For My Life? When was that big moment for you? Take as long as you need.
So I don't know that I ever got to the point where I said Fuck My Life. But some of the darker moments of my life, I think having my kids really reinvigorated my sense of purpose and just made me look at life in a whole different, like I never knew how much I could love until I had my kids. Obviously I love my wife dearly, but the love we have together for our children, like I never knew that could even exist, right? So I think that's probably the one moment where I'm like, all right, and a lot of what I'm doing with my health journey and all now is geared towards I want to be with them as much as possible. I want to be here as long as I can for them. So I think that would probably be the point in my life where I'm like, you know what, I got to take my health seriously. I gotta be more present. I gotta stop being on my phone. I gotta be here and be an active dad and be present with them and enjoy every single moment of it. Because people tell you, like before I had our son Liam, he's 7, and our daughter Adelaide's just turned 3. But before I had them, people would say, yo, enjoy every minute because it goes so quick. And like I had no frame of reference because I didn't have any kids. I remember people telling me that and I stored it. But God, were they right? Like it just flies. So I try to.
You have no idea. Yep. Embrace it. Yep. You got a 7 and a 3-year-old, but you're gonna blink and they're gonna be 10, and just wait.
Yeah, Don't Blink came on the radio on my drive-in today, and I'm like, oh man, the Kenny Chesney song, and I started feeling it. Yeah,
I got 3 of them suckers, and man, if I don't blink and they're another 3 years older, I just can't.
It's crazy. It's a beautiful thing, though.
Yeah, that is spectacular. That's actually great. I appreciate you sharing that. That is I have heard that a lot from even some of the guys like, yo, I'm still here because of my kids. Like I'm still alive because of my kids. Like I really want to be better for them. And it's also good that you're taking your health seriously because, the average lifespan of an officer after to retire, specifically law enforcement, and I think firefighters, 5 years. So you got to take that shit seriously. That's a stat that needs to change. You need to be around longer,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate your time today. And we will definitely talk more offline, even about some of the programs maybe that we can match up and begin to grow and bring out to more departments and really help. That's all it's about.
Thanks a lot, James Rocco. I appreciate everything you guys are doing.
Absolutely, brother. See everybody. Thank you for joining.